Welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures That Outperform. This is a fun series, folks. Jerks at Work. We've all seen these people, and we've got a great one today, the fearful leader. We're going to get into it. Hope you've never worked for one. Hope you never have to work for one of them. But they're around. I've worked for them. Terry's worked for them. These people are trouble. Now, this is a great series. We've got a lot of very good episodes coming. Even though this is episode 10, you can see this is just packed with all sorts of great archetypes that are very unproductive and a pain in the neck to work with. And so we'll be getting into all these. Hope you could join us for the full series. And so let's talk about this fearful leader, who they are. These are the people that just can't make a decision. They hesitate about everything. They're in the way. They create uncertainty. People who work for them are just dread having to get them involved in any kind of decision. They want to make all decisions, go around them, do anything but go to these folks. They're the worst. And so, Tara, how do we spot these people?
Yeah. So these are those folks that they always need more data. They delay on making the decision. They really just want to re-review, and they ask the same questions over and over again because internally they're not confident. So they're just trying not to make a bad choice. So what ends up, they get into this analysis paralysis where they just keep studying and studying and studying. And sometimes they never make a choice. Sometimes they delay so far that it's just infinitely that they just stay in this loop of, I need more information. They really don't feel confident in themselves. So there's constantly seeking reassurance from somebody else, from people that are higher up than them. They're constantly looking for just somebody to confirm and make them feel comfortable. They really do want to avoid those conflicts. They don't want to have tough conversations. They're over explaining. They
Yeah.
don't want to have criticism. They really freeze when it's time to make a decision about something. They
Bottom line
really
is they don't want to own a decision. And they'll
they don't want to
ask,
own it
they'll go to
because
the
they're
boss
afraid
to
that it's
say,
wrong.
right,
So if they're wrong, then they don't want to take the blame, which as a leader, you cannot be in this place where
oh
you
no,
don't want to fall on the sword for your people or take the blame. Hey, that was a mistake. That was a bad choice. That's on me. You have to be able to own your choices.
right. I've had one of these people work for me. And they were coming to me to run an idea by me. But I figured out that they were just looking to say, well, you agreed to this later if something went wrong.
Right.
And so I would never give them the answer. I would say, look, what do you think? You got to, this is your area. You got to get into details and you have to make a decision. Just let me know what decision you're going with. And I need to know by this date. And I would dump it on them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about handling them, what to do. If you've got one of these people, like I just said, you could corner them and force them to make a decision, but you've got to be clear about what the expectation is in terms of them making decisions and having them build and define decision authority for how they're going to operate. You can define exactly when you want to be involved in the decision if you're their boss, which is a good thing to do because there are times you probably do want to be involved where the stakes are high enough. But that makes it clear that you're not going to be the person that's going to give them approval on the things that they need to decide. You got to really coach them and grow them. They can build confidence. Some of these people can outgrow this if things start going well for them. If they can't, you're going to end up having to get rid of them, obviously. Reinforce the fact that making decisions in a timely manner is important, and perfection is the enemy of good. It just always has been.
Mm-hmm.
These people strive for perfection because they don't want to be wrong. And let them know it's okay to make mistakes. And as long as they're defined in a box where their mistake isn't going to be too big, then it's okay.
Yeah. You really have to encourage them to own it. But then I agree with you, Frank, for sure. You got to let them know that it's okay if the decision is wrong. We're a team. That's why we have a team and we don't just let
Yeah.
things rest on one person. you want to make sure that that person understands, hey, if we get this wrong, we're getting this wrong. It's not just your bad choice. We're making these decisions. We're coming together. You have to make the final decision, but it's okay. We're able to come together as a team and recover from whatever it is. So giving that person the confidence, really just need a lot of coaching and confidence on, just knowing,
Mhm.
hey, it's okay. If we make a bad choice, we'll just redirect. We can come up with a plan B. I
Yeah.
love this off, if you're reporting to a fearful leader, just offer them structured options. Are we doing A or B? Don't give
Yep.
them too many choices. Don't give them too much information. Are we doing A or B? Document those decisions so that you don't have to keep going back and forth with them. And, I had a manager like this before, and it just cracked me up because you'd constantly be going back to try to remind them, no, this is what you said, this is,
Hey,
what you asked me to do.
this is
This
what we
is,
decided. We've
yeah,
already
this
moved
is what we
forward. You can't
decided.
go revisit that because they want to reopen stuff constantly. Like,
Yeah,
oh, hey, I spent a little more time thinking about this. Maybe we should blah, blah, blah. No
yeah,
work.
yeah. And it's frustrating because you're constantly in this cycle and things never get complete. You
No.
never feel like there's an end to it, that you're constantly just in this cycle, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. We're redoing the same things over and over and over again.
And I love the image here. Are we sure this is the right path? Look at the frustration of the
Yeah,
people like,
yeah,
oh my
he's
God.
literally sweating.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
are
yeah.
we sure?
Great.
Yeah, you've got to set some real hard deadlines and you got to stick to it. You can't um, be wiggly with this person. You really do have to be pretty firm and, say, hey, you don't have to be disrespectful about it, but you do need calm, firm deadlines. We're going to decide on this day, we're going to make a choice and we have to move forward. We can't move forward without a choice. So we're going to make the choice. We're going to make a decision. We're going to escalate only when there are delays. We're not going to keep pulling everybody back together. I absolutely hate these meetings where you get pulled into a room. There's a large group of people, and we're all trying to make this decision
Yeah.
for the person that needs to make the decision. And you give them all the advice, you give them your recommendation, you say, this is what I think. Usually, the people in the room will eventually come to some kind of consensus. They may not all agree, but at least they'll say, this is probably the best option. And then the person is still stalling. It's
What
still,
I've found is when a team of people work for something like this, that they eventually work around them. They build
absolutely.
they build basically a method of updating the leader as to what was decided during over the week. Maybe there's a weekly update, and you
Yeah.
make sure all the decisions are there. Here's what we decided, and you overwhelm them with too much stuff because they can't revisit all of it. And that way, instead of having him or her come into every decision, there's a point where they're engaged to give them an update on what happened. And so you structure everything to kind of box them out unless you really need them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that does work. And then of course there's things that you don't want to do, right? If they work for you, you just absolutely cannot ignore the fact that they're causing decision paralysis because ultimately you are responsible as well. You're not the person doing it, but you own it. They work for you. Don't give them too much stuff, and don't don't overload them with ambiguity. That's for sure, because they'll never get anywhere. Don't put them down publicly in front of others. You got to handle this stuff privately. People do need to grow and do need to be coached. That's just one of the areas they have to grow in. And don't let that become contagious where other people can avoid decisions as well. It can be comfortable if you can just go on not making decisions. You don't own anything. And, it's going to crash the place. But you've got to actually make sure that, there is decisions or the decision rights and the structure and how to get decisions made is all defined and that things don't get hung up because there's a process or a governance mechanism in place to drive this, and you take it out of the hands of that individual.
Yeah. Yeah. You really don't want to if you're reporting to this person, you don't want to give them these aggressive demands. Like, you don't want to bring in more stress into the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're already stressed, right? So
Oh yeah.
they're really struggling with making the decision, and then you come in as a hothead and you're aggressive and you're frustrated and you give them all of that. It's just going to make them shut down even more. It's not going to help them at all. So if you really want to bring this to a decision, you've got to de-escalate. For whatever reason, they're stressed, they're frustrated, they're afraid. And so to get some person to move forward when they're afraid, you have to create a sense of calm. You have to create a space where they feel safe, because for whatever reason, they don't feel safe. They don't feel like they can make the decision. So you have
Yeah.
to create that for them. You have to help them see that, hey, we can make this choice. It's not going to be the end of the world. And you know what? The funny thing about this whole thing is, this guy or girl that's in this situation, it's usually not life or death.
Oh no. The
It's
minor decisions can
it's
just double
usually
things
not,
up.
some decision where someone could die from this decision that they have to make. It's usually something so trivial in the big scheme of life. It's usually not that big of a deal. If you make the wrong decision, I work in software, so it's constantly software decisions. If you
Yep.
decide to go with the wrong vendor, what's the big deal? So you made the decision, you went with the wrong vendor, it cost some money, yes, but nobody died.
Oh no.
Nobody lost life over this decision. You come back, you have conversations with the vendor, you try to get it back on track. Sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to eliminate that vendor. You have to go with a different vendor. You have to change direction. It just doesn't work out. But that's the worst that could happen. That,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
people get frustrated, but in the big scheme of things, frustration hasn't killed anybody. Like,
no. You
yeah,
make the best decision given the data you have. And
that's right.
look, it's all imperfect. That's why you have release 1, release 2, release 3. You're always
That's right.
improving everything because
That's right.
as you move forward, knowledge grows. You realize, oh, had I known that, I would have done it this way. But you make the best decision you can at the time. And I'd say one thing never to do with these people, if you're a team working for them, is to totally box them out because now their ego is going to be at
Yeah.
risk. So
Yeah.
you got to elegantly involve them, but in a way that they're not really making the decision. You're letting them know there's a process. You're going to inform them as to decisions that were made. And when you really do need to engage them, but work elegantly around them as best you can. I would say that's what works most effectively. And
Yeah.
these people do create a lot of collateral damage, stuff stalls, decisions don't get made, everything slows to a crawl. Teams just they don't start to trust this leader or the leadership in general because if the boss doesn't get involved and isn't involved enough to understand that this person's in the way and they're dealing with it, and if they don't, then you've got a loss of confidence in the whole leadership structure because
That's
they're
right.
letting this person get in the way of everything. And you end up with decisions being revisited again and again. Hey, I was thinking a little bit more about this. Maybe, blah, 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 blah. It's endless, endless. These people
Yeah.
are always in the way.
Yeah. This personality type is
Mhm.
one that they're like this in every aspect of their life. It's not
Yeah.
just at work.
No.
They're actually insecure and fearful in life. And so this is another area where, people feel like you come to work and you check your personality and your personal self out and you check into your work persona.
Yeah.
But a lot of times these people that we see show up in the workplace, it's because that's who they really are. And
That's
so
who they
you
are. Yeah.
cannot ignore the human side
They're
of
not faking
business.
it.
Yeah, they're not faking it. This is
No.
just who they are. So you've got to address that personality flaw in order to get them to be more productive. And this is where, having great culture, having leaders that are sensitive to people, that really understand human people, and they're not just
Yeah.
robots. They're not just going to come in and do the job and forget about what's going on at home. Like there really is no separation of this person. And so you have to address that. And sometimes that means helping the person get connected with a good mentor, help this
Yeah.
person get into therapy if that's what they really need to overcome some of these things that and challenges that they're facing. Sometimes that's what's needed. And it's okay. We're not all
Yeah.
perfect people just walking around.
And
If
it's
you
a,
want your workplace to be healthier, you've got to have healthy people. And
yeah.
if you need to address it, address it. Don't be afraid of
And
that.
Tara, it's okay that they may not remain a manager. No one
That's
said
right.
that they have to be a manager. They may be able to excel at doing certain other things that don't require them to be in the middle of making decisions. And
That's right.
oftentimes that's the right thing to do is they got promoted into a role they should never have been in because they're not going to make it. So you could give them the benefit of the doubt, get them some coaching, but they're in the way, and if they can't solve it, they cannot be a leader. They just
That's
can't.
right.
They're not capable of doing that job. And I think that's a big thing because innovation slows terribly. People start to make decisions and go around them. They may be
Yeah.
making not as good a
Yeah.
decision as they would have had they had a good manager asking the right questions. And people get anxious because things aren't moving, and they know that's going to create problems.
Yeah. And that fear is contagious.
That
If
fear,
your leader feels insecure, then you start to feel that. You start to
yeah.
question yourself. So you definitely want to nip that in the bud as quickly as possible.
And you also want to join us for the next episode, the
Yeah.
Always Right Coworker. We produce an episode. It's every streamed every week on Wednesdays, 3 o'clock Eastern. So I hope you could join us for the next one, and we hope to see you there.
Yes. Bye for now.